But you don't need to wait for everything to fall apart to find out. Ask yourself these 7 questions to see how your love life will affect your business for better or for worse. Starting with this first one, which is how I realized I had married the right man. But it wasn't smooth sailing at first because my parents were not supportive of our relationship. They didn't think Steven was ambitious, smart, or tall enough.
Jimmy 6'2", you 6 foot away from talking to a girl.
Asian values, what can I say? But then, one day, my mom walked into the room and saw my dad lying on the floor, as white and as still as a ghost. Right after calling 911, she called me, scared out of her mind. The problem was I was working across the country at the time and not close by, but Steven was. Without missing a beat, he dropped everything and rushed to the hospital to be with my mom and to translate for her. Plus, in the weeks after my dad's life-saving surgery, Steven would wake up at 5 a.m. every morning to visit them at the hospital and bring them breakfast before he went to work. Finally, my parents saw what I had known all along. Steven and I are completely aligned in our belief that family comes first. And when you find someone who shares your values, you treat them like the treasure they are. Which brings us to the first question. Do you share the same values? Because that sets the entire foundation for your building a life together. Please let me know in the comments, what is that foundational value for you and your partner? But that alone isn't enough either. If we hadn't been aligned on this next question, either my business or my marriage would have failed. Early on, when Steven and I were newly married, we weren't going on vacations or partying on the weekends. Not only was Steven working a demanding job, but I was spending every spare moment working on my business. He likes to remind me that he'd come home from work at 2 a.m. and see me still huddled over the keyboard. Plus, we were living in a cheap apartment in the Bronx with about 20 cockroaches as roommates. But here's the kicker. It's not like we weren't making any money. In fact, during that time, my business hit over $1 million in sales. But what was going on was that I was putting all that money right back into the business because it was more important for me at the time to grow than to live it up. Plus, I believed in myself and in the business, so why wouldn't I give it every chance possible to grow? Just as importantly though, and one of the reasons I will always love this man, Steven believed in me too. He wasn't afraid of saying no to vacations or fancy things, even though he knew how well the business was doing. Because he believed all our hard work was gonna get us to our shared goal. This second question is where you see if someone is actually willing to walk their talk. Are you both willing to sacrifice when needed for your shared values and goals? But there is one aspect of sharing that you definitely don't want. It's something I admire a lot about Steven. Even though my business makes enough for him to do so, he has no interest in retiring because he loves his job. Plus, he takes pride in contributing his skills and talents to the path that he's forged for himself. To me, that's so sexy. High five to that. But it's not just me who thinks this is important. Relationship therapists have found, and I quote, independence in a relationship is an essential factor to a couple's success. I love that at the end of a long day, Steven and I can sit down and share all the cool things we're doing. Plus, that independence in our careers translates into so many other great areas too. For example, Steven loves watching videos about food. So every day I can expect to hear about a new technique he saw on MasterChef or a new food he wants to try. Seeing him talk about the things he loves just increases my respect and appreciation for him. Plus, things never get boring. Which brings us to our third question. Do they have their own thing going on? But while having different interests is vital for a healthy relationship, there is one thing you need to be completely aligned with. If you're not, it can lead to heartbreak, resentment, and guilt. Because of this, Anita Klipla, a respected marriage and family therapist, suggests that you figure this out as early on as possible. This way, she says, it's easier to walk away before you fall in love. Thankfully, Steven and I have always agreed on this because we both feel that we want to first stabilize our career, finances, and maturity beforehand. I'm talking about being on board with becoming parents a little later in life. It's a life-changing decision, which is why question number 4 is so important. Do you agree on family planning? Just as importantly, this next question has saved me from myself time and time again. Because if you haven't already guessed from watching my channel, I am an overthinker. If you are too, you know that feeling of being all up in your head where you just cannot see a way out. Thankfully, this is where my better half, at least in this case, comes in. To quote him, and it's so true, he is a simple guy. He helps ground me because in his mind, nothing is that big a deal. Plus, sometimes I just need to hear him affirm, it's okay, go do your thing, we'll be all right no matter what. Honestly, that personal support is a large part of where I got the confidence to take some big risks in my business early on.
Have confidence in me.
Plus, it goes both ways too. I challenge Steven to think and dream bigger with my vivid imagination and my ability to go into the details. Thus the question, do you balance each other out? But there's a huge common fear you might have about your partnership. Because every year, as you improve yourself and your business, you'll see your career, habits, and lifestyle up level. But it might not always feel like a good thing, especially if your partner isn't growing with you. According to one study, almost 40% of people have experienced a relationship ending because of this. It's a fear I really struggled with in the beginning too. What if you keep on growing because your growth isn't capped in a business, but one day you look back and realize your partner didn't change with you?
If I'm going to be a partner in a law firm by the time I'm 30, I need a boyfriend who's not such a complete bonehead.
But the thing about Steven, and this is so important, is that he is open to learning. He's constantly asking questions and looking to proactively grow with me. And because of that, he has. Which brings us to question number 6. Can you both grow together? One of the best ways to make sure that you do is with this next factor. Thankfully, Steven and I were both raised by Asian immigrant parents. So this mantra is not unfamiliar to us. Work a lot and work hard. Let me know if this was your family too. If we hadn't both held on to this in our adult years, things would look a lot different now. I know that for a fact because early on, I was working nonstop. In my first online business, I was building it on the side, working a busy 9 to 5, and putting my heart and soul into doing both as best as I could. Other guys might have guilt tripped me, like, how come you're not spending enough time with me? But thankfully, not Steven. He never made me feel guilty for doing what I needed to do. And thank goodness, because without that time and work in the beginning, I would not be here today. That's why it's so important the answer to this next question is yes. Do you both appreciate and do working hard? But I also know these questions are not universally applicable. So I would love to hear from you. Please let me know in the comments if there's another question that has been key for your relationship.